Welcome to my food forest. This is the back part of the forest. I rarely show it in videos because I haven't done a lot of development back here yet. Up here's the house, as you can see, and there's less sun back here. So this is actually truly a forest back here, and in the front's where we grow most of our food. But we do have forest forage back here, including mushrooms, all types of berries, salmon berries, thimbleberries, blackberries, salal berries, and a number of other things. But we're going to get into the food forest videos soon, waiting for a few more things to leaf out. We actually recently just had snow melt, so it's been really slow spring here, and it's been very gray. This is one of the first sunny days we've had in this entire spring. But what I wanted to talk to you about today were 10 things that I wish I had known when I started my permaculture adventure. Okay, one of the reasons why I love this property is the woods. When you are thinking about getting a property, or if you're thinking about doing permaculture, I would say consider the property you're going to purchase before. Some people are dealing with putting in permaculture situations with a property they already own. That can be a whole other conversation. But we chose this specific property for 3 reasons. 1, it was location. 2, it was architecturally a significant structure. The person who built this house was a student of Frank Lloyd Wright. So we knew that we could invest in this property and eventually turn a profit that would allow us to buy a bigger property at a later time. And then the third was that there was enough land to work with here to actually develop a pretty full comprehensive permaculture setup. Now, we have a little under an acre here, but it's butted up against a green belt that's not going to be developed. So that was twofold for us, because we can encourage native forest species in the green belt behind us, like thimbleberries and salal berries and salmon berries and things that add to our forage, and also bring in more animals. So we have animals in this permaculture setup, but we do not have domesticated animals. We didn't want, at this point in our journey, the responsibility of domesticated permaculture animals. However, we have full ecosystem here, which was part of the selection idea. We have deer, raccoon, possum, woodpeckers, tons of different types of birds, eagles. We have rabbits, we have moles, we have voles, we have bobcats, we have coyote. So we have a full spectrum ecosystem, from apex predator down to prey, birds and bugs and everything in between. So that was a consideration. If you're in a strict urban setting, you're gonna have to play around with that ecosystem design. So my first suggestion is spend at least 1 season mapping out the sun hours every week, where they are, the times of day, how long, and where on your property. And that'll help you with your design later on. Number 2, and like I said, these are not in any particular order. Number 2, do not grow species that are ill-suited for your grow area. So in this region where I live, you can go to all the nurseries and they will have tons of apricot, peach, and nectarine trees. But those species don't do well here because it's too damp. They end up with really bad problems with leaf curl and rust. Then you're in a position where you have to put a lot of copper on them to try to battle that. Then the copper gets in the soil. Then the copper gets into your fruit. And then you start pulling the soil out of ecosystem dynamics, because too much copper will shift the bacteria load in your soil and the fungal load in your soil. This is a very important consideration, and it's one that I didn't know when I first started. And I wished I had, but when I started, I didn't know a lot about growing fruit trees, and I didn't know a lot about this area because I grew up in a different state. Do the research, find out what grows really well in the area you're growing, and focus in on that. It's better to have things that thrive in the environment that you're in and require as little extra help or inputs as possible. My whole goal here is to never spray in this food forest. And I started out with a nectarine and an apricot that immediately got leaf curl, and then I bought nectarines that were supposedly leaf curl resistant, and that's what they were bred for, and those were not leaf curl resistant. They still got leaf curl here. I ended up taking those species out, and then I looked around at what I had planted, and I ended up taking out a bunch of stuff that I didn't feel was thriving in this environment, and it was a little costly. I'm talking quite a few $100s. So that's a really important one to consider. I know some people get excited about horticulture and want to experiment, and I, believe me, love that idea. But there are things that are not going to grow well wherever you're at, and I wouldn't put them in the food forest. Maybe you're going to put them in pots and move them around or something like that. That'd be a whole nother scenario, but not actually in your food forest. Okay, number 3. You need more soil builders than you think. So I can't tell you how many hours and dollars I've spent building soil. Way more than I would have anticipated. Way more. I'm talking whether it's for the beds or wood chipping for the fruit trees. I would say probably half of my effort in the permaculture food forest is composting, wood chipping, and building soil. And in the Northwest specifically, it's very wet here. And what happens is it washes a lot of nutrients right out of the soil. So you really have to build a very humusy soil that sort of absorbs water, so that not too much water drains through, so you're not constantly losing nutrients. And on top of that, you constantly have to rebuild that soil because it's so wet. It decomposes quickly, and it's constant maintenance. So that's a really big one, and I thought that I would have enough tools in space to build enough soil here on the property, but I've had to truck in a lot. And I hope that over time that lessens, but that was not something I was anticipating. When you're doing a food forest versus a small garden, your need is way larger. Now, once the ecosystem is in check and we start getting the cycling and we have the forest actually fully mature, it's going to be a lot less. But if you're just starting up, you are going to need more soil builders than you can really imagine. And that's going to include, I mean, we bought a wood chipper, a really high quality wood chipper. That was expensive. Bins. I mean, it was financially a bit of a burden. So that leads me to number 4. Expect to spend thousands and thousands of dollars. So when I first started planning it out, I did an initial budget. I'm way over budget by a lot. I have probably dropped between tools, sheds, plants, lost plants, storage facilities, all of the things that I would put into the permaculture project, definitely over $20,000 over 5 years. So if you don't have the resources or money management skills, I would caution you against jumping in with both feet. I would say start with a garden and work your way up. It takes money, and it comes back to this whole thing. Well, you can get plants and starts from other people, and certainly that helps, but you just have to have money. That's where it is at the end of the day. And you can buy cheap plants I did that a couple of times myself. Like, oh, here's a $12 fruit tree start. They're not trees that are healthy. They're mass produced. They're going to give you problems. They're not the kind of quality starts that I would encourage you to have, that I think bring more success with the project. This leads me to number 5. You are going to want more annuals than you think you do. I made a design I thought was going to be really lovely and filled with fruit trees and shrubs and so on. But after the first year, I knew immediately I didn't have enough space for all of the annuals I wanted, especially with the goal of like feeding myself through the winter, you know, with the foods that I grow. I eat a lot of vegetables and I eat a lot of tomatoes, and I didn't have enough of those in comparison to the fruit. So I went back and revised. I built more beds, and I'll probably be opening up a little bit more space for more annuals in the future. So that was a big one. I would advise you to really think about that, because a fruit tree will produce a lot of fruit, but your annual space is not going to produce as much of a harvest. So proportionately, you're going to want to plan in a little bit more annual space than you think you need. Or start with annual space, leave some space open, and decide as you go along how you want to commit that open space. Okay, number 6, it takes constant work. Yes. A food forest, they will tell you, in permaculture, enthusiasts will say, oh, it's self-sustaining because it's a forest. Well, maybe that's true after 10 years or something like this, but I can tell you for the first 5 years, at the very least, which is where we're at now, it is constant work. You are trimming, you are shredding, you are selectively weeding to encourage the things that you want to grow to take hold. You are harvesting, you are preserving food. And I would say that those two things, the harvesting and food preservation, probably take up a good share of the time. And for us, also watering, because we didn't want to put in an irrigation system here yet. We wanted to see how things developed before we wanted to put in a water system, and we were kind of playing around and learning about water systems. So we do a lot of hand watering, and that's a daily chore in the summer here, because we get a lot of rain all winter, spring and fall, and then it just bakes during the summer. So we probably spend 3 to 4 hours a day in the summer on the food forest. So that's a big time commitment. If you have kids and you have some, you know, crazy job or super active life, you should think about your time before you jump into a permaculture food forest. You have to commit to it, or it doesn't work very well. Number 7, revisions are necessary. You're going to learn as you go. So I had this like great design. I read all the permaculture design books and, like, you know, thought I was very well versed in my design. And I found after the first growing season I had to do a revision. The second growing season had to do a revision. And every year I've been doing revisions, whether that means moving plants or taking more stuff out. Lots of revisions happen. So you can't hold too tightly to your ideas, and just go with the flow and roll with it. And that, from everything for me, came from wanting to bring in more plants that could produce fat. Hold on a second. Alright, I had to make some room on my phone, but getting back to this, the food that you will produce when done right and with care, you cannot find food like this in the store or even a farmer's market. You are out there every day with your individual plants, and you care for each one, and you know what's going on with each one, and you can pick at just the right time. This is not going to happen when food is produced on a mass scale. Will not happen. The foods that I have grown have been so flavorful and so full of nutrients and life and vitality, and my health has improved immensely, and my sense of what real food is also has. I cannot even eat a store-bought tomato anymore. Can't do it, and I won't. It's absolute garbage. It's styrofoam. It's nutrient devoid. And I would say that with almost all things except for some greens. Most greens seem to be okay in a store. And fruit, oh my God, fruit is night and day different. Night and day different. The strawberries I grow are strawberries. The shit that's in the store that's sold as strawberries, garbage. Total waste of all of our energy, you know, a waste of our ecosystems, the waste of chemicals. I mean, it's just, when you get into permaculture and you start doing it for yourself, you will see how bad what we're doing to the ecosystems with farming is. There's a woodpecker up there. We have some pileated woodpeckers that have moved in. We have owls. Just so nice here. So in closing, I'll just say that creating a permaculture food forest, despite costing loads of money and being a lot more work than I anticipated, time-wise, and just taking up more than I thought it would, turns out to be a much better investment than I thought it would be. I'm absolutely ecstatic with the food that we grow, and I can't tell you how much humans are missing by no longer growing their own food. Humans all used to grow their own food, as my aunts, uncles, and grandparents did. So it's just one generation now moving into two that's really missing this vital aspect of, in my opinion, being human. And I think that as a species, we need to reconsider this with our urban design and make sure that we can still, in urban environments, grow our own food. And it's not that hard. It's design, a little bit of space, and then making sure that there's not elements that are lobbying against this fundamental right for you as a human being to grow and produce your own food on your own property. That's it for now. Let me know if you have other questions, maybe things that I didn't cover I can answer quickly. We'll see you soon for the full permaculture food forest tour.